Hi guys, happy Monday again. I'm Kelly Yang, author of Front Desk and Three Keys and Parachutes, coming out on May 26th. Please go and order it. And I am in conversation today with one of my really great friends, May Respicio, who wrote The House That Lou Built and Any Day with You. So I'm just waiting for May to join us. Here we go. She's right here. Hey May, are you there? I think this is May's first time. Hey,
Hi!
how
Yay!
are
We did
you?
it! I didn't know if
Yes, we did it.
this is my first Instagram live, everybody, which
Are
I
you
think is like,
serious?
yes, that's a huge moment, right?
Yay! Welcome to Instagram Live.
Yay! I was
Um,
texting Kelly so many questions like, do I do it vertically or horizontally? And when and how? I just did not know. So
yeah.
thank you for having me.
No, thanks for being here. May and I both live in the Bay Area, and we are both middle grade authors.
Mm-hmm.
And we both won the Asian Pacific American Award for Children's Literature. It was,
Yay!
yay! And not only that,
Look, and here's a
but
sticker. Oh, where's
yeah,
your
there's a
sticker?
sticker
There's
here,
my
and
sticker.
there's also a sticker. And oh, we gotta get a screenshot of this later. But anyway, um, she and I were on the same flight going over to collect our awards in Washington. Do you remember that? This was like last
Yes.
summer.
And that was totally, it was a coincidence. I saw you in the airport. I was like, oh my gosh, I think that's Kelly.
I
And
was
then,
so happy to see
and then we
you.
got on the plane and we were right there next to each other. And I think the guy next to us was like, oh my gosh, they're talking so much. But it was, yeah, it was good. And we're not on an
Yeah.
airplane right now, but it's
I
okay.
remember that. I remember how I wanted you to sit next to me, but there was a guy sitting between us. And at first I was like, can you please move? And he was like, no, like I get an aisle seat. I'm not moving. But then I kept talking to you and we kept talking so much. And he was like, you know what? I'm just going to
Yeah,
move.
here, take my seat.
But anyway, it's so great to see you. How are you doing?
You know, not too bad. We're coming back after spring break, so my kids are doing their schoolwork right now, and
Oh, that's
it's
great.
always a little hard to do that. But how are
Yeah.
you? So
Yeah,
Kelly and I live
same
really
thing.
close to each other.
We also had spring break last week, and I was like, oh, are you kidding me? Like, what? Why? Like, why are we even having spring break? Like every day is a spring break now.
Yeah, why are we even
So
having school, right? No, I'm
yeah,
just
I'm
kidding.
really glad.
Yeah,
I'm so glad that they're back in school because at least they have the online homework to keep them occupied. For us working parents, this is like, it's so hard. It's
it
like the double
is.
whammy of hard. There's like, you're always feeling like, at least I am, like you're failing on some front and there's some fire that you have to put out. And
Mm-hmm.
especially for May and I, because we both have books coming out next month. So you guys, please support us because it is so hard right now to be a creator with
It's
a book coming
hard to sell a book right
out.
now and to write a book. I don't know about you. Have you been feeling like you can be creative during this time, or are you writing, or how?
I've been doing a lot of like outlining and like
Mm-hmm.
organizing and planning, which I tell everybody on this show, like that counts, guys, as writing. Like that,
It's so
I mean,
important.
totally
Yes,
counts as writing, right?
it
Um,
does. Yeah.
and I want to talk a little bit about your book because I had a chance to watch one of your videos this weekend
You
where you
did. Oh
read
my
from the
gosh.
first couple of pages and I loved it. As first of all, just as like a beach person, I'm a huge beach goer. I love the beach. I grew
Mm-hmm.
up next to the beach, so I love it. Can you tell us a little bit about your book?
I will, but you know what? I'm going to show it to you first. Look at that
Yes.
cover. Yay! This cover was illustrated by Rebecca Mock, who is also a graphic novelist, and it's beautiful. I feel like it captured the story wonderfully. So
Yeah.
it's a middle grade novel. It's all about this girl. She's 12, and her name is Kaya. And Kaya has this very special person in her life. It's her great grandpa. And one day he makes an announcement. He decides that he's going to return to his homeland of the Philippines. And so Kaya is like, no, she's crushed. She doesn't want him to go. So she and her friends make a movie that's all about these different Filipino creatures and folklore that her grandpa likes to tell them about. And so
Mhm.
they make this awesome movie and they enter it into this big citywide film contest. This takes place in Los Angeles. And they think that if they win, it's going to get him, or it's going to stop him from saying goodbye. So
Right.
there's it's a little sad. There's some, it's
Oh.
there's some tissue inducing moments, but
I
happy
love it.
moments
I love
and
it.
funny moments. So this is very dear to my heart. And that's it. It comes out on May 5th.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So,
And when does
first of
Parachutes
all,
come out? Hold on. When does
yeah,
Parachutes come out?
Parachutes comes out on May 26th, so we're in the same boat. But I wanted to talk a little bit about that because, my kids are very close to their grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
We're actually quarantined with my parents right now,
Oh, wow. Okay.
so, which is a mixed blessing. It's like
I can
wonderful.
imagine. Yeah.
I hope my mom's not watching, but like wonderful in some ways, but also
Uh-huh.
like, oh my God, it's a lot of time. It's a lot of time together, but it's wonderful to have that time together. It is
Right,
really
right.
wonderful. But I love that, intergenerational sort of that emotion right there. We don't see it that often in kids' books, and we need so much of it. And I wondered, what is your inspiration for that? Did you live with your grandparents growing up?
Yeah, I did actually. So my maternal grandparents lived with my family for a little while growing up, and I feel like that's a very common dynamic in Asian culture, or at
Yeah,
least in Filipino American culture,
yeah,
is,
definitely.
and a lot of my friends who are the same age, their grandparents live with them, their lolas and their lolas, and so it just wasn't any big deal to me. It's just what my life was. And so they had a ton of influence on me, like wonderful influence. I was very close to all of my grandparents. So this character has nothing to do with either of my grandfathers. I mean, he's very different. He's like, so
Your
he's
grandfather's not a graphic artist?
well, so he's not, this is Datang. He's 90. He wears Hawaiian shirts. He surfs. So he's this real like caricature. Um, and so much fun. And everyone in the book loves him so much. And all the teachers who have read this book so far have all talked about how much they love his character. But he was a lot different than my two grandfathers. But having those intergenerational influences on me definitely inspired this book. I wanted to explore how our family's stories take root, what we take from other people, and how that shapes our lens, how we look at the world.
Right.
So definitely that was, one thing that inspired this book. And then a lot of other things just from my life inspired this. I lived in walking distance to the beach for the longest time. So
Mm-hmm.
our kids and I, we used to just bike to the beach, and my husband and my sons, they surf. So a lot of personal influences all went into this book.
That's wonderful. And same with, obviously with front desk, I lived in a motel and
Right.
managed a front desk. And a lot of the stories in both front desk and Three Keys, which is the sequel coming out in
Mm-hmm.
September.
Yay.
Yeah, they're taken from real life, I mean, we take what we've lived through and we just sort of stir it into a soup, into a pot, and then we grab
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the details from that. And I want to ask you about that. I mean, do you find that process liberating, or do you find it like, limiting? Because sometimes when we write from experience, I've felt that way sometimes. Like we write from experience, and it's
Mm-hmm.
like, but this was not my experience. And then before you know it, you're like, well, wait, I'm writing fiction, so why am I even limiting? Why am I
Yeah,
doing that?
there's so many levels of writing from your own life or writing from your own experience, right? And I will say that for anyone who's doing that, it takes a lot of courage to take aspects of your life and write about them, because you're
Yeah.
basically putting yourself on the page. And there's a lot of courage that it takes to do that and to share that with readers. And I think there's different levels. Would you call Front Desk semi autobiographical, or is it very fictionalized?
Yeah, it's
Is
very much based on real life. I always tell
Okay.
people that it's like 60% real and 40% made up. And so, of course, every school I go
Yeah,
to, the kids are like, which part? Was this part real? Was this part real? Was this part real?
right,
you
right.
know? But yeah, it's very much based. I think all my work, I mean, even in Parachutes actually also has a Filipino American girl. Yay!
Yay!
Danny.
I
And
still have to
Danny
read it.
is
I'm
an
excited to read.
amazing, she's an amazing student. She's a scholarship student, a debate star, so that's very much mirrored on my life, like having gone to schools, being the scholarship student, feeling the sense of
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, I better not screw up here, like, oh
Mm-hmm.
my God. And what if something happens to you, which is like totally unjust, in Parachutes, which is a YA.
Mm-hmm.
Danny's teacher, her debate coach starts acting really inappropriately towards her. And that is, that's very much based on my own experience. And when something like that happens and you're a scholarship student, it just like layers all of the, the anxiety, the like
Mm-hmm.
turmoil. It layers all
It
of that
turns
because,
everything around.
right, because
Yeah.
you're like,
Upside
okay,
down.
I can speak up, but what are the repercussions to me? But also, like, do I have the privilege of speaking up? And it's like all of
Mm-hmm.
those experiences are very much mirrored on my own life and my own journey, trying to like be a girl in today's world. So
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk a little bit about that. Like, how deep do you dig when you are writing from experience, and how does that work?
Yeah, well, for me, it's a little bit different. I wouldn't call this semi-autobiographical at all, but when I do write from my experiences and when I dig deep, I use those to inspire other settings and other
Mm-hmm.
characters and other people. But I really, it's a powerful thing and a meaningful thing to write from your experiences. I do a lot of journaling,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes I'll look back and I'll take little nuggets and I'll think, oh, this might be interesting for a character or for
Yeah.
a setting.
Yeah.
And I think when you're writing from your own life that way, it's such a helpful tool to find your voice and how you best express yourself on the page.
Right.
But this, like, people always ask, they say, oh, are you Lou? Did you build a tiny
Yeah.
house?
Yeah. Let's talk about your debut. I love your debut so
Oh,
much.
thank
It's an
you.
honor to even like be your friend. I mean, honestly. And I'm just like, everywhere I go, I'm like, I know May. But you did such a marvelous job. I mean, it was
Thank
so
you.
layered. It's such a great character. So how much was that of that was based on your own life?
Well, when you write from your own life, that's where the richness comes in, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
where the layer and that's where the nuance comes in. And that's the thing that only you can write. When you're writing from your own experiences and your own voice, nobody can take that from you. That's you
Yeah.
being true to yourself on the page. And that's what
Yeah.
I love about taking your experiences. I mean, same thing with Front Desk. I never built a tiny house. I have remodeled like a little cabin. But
Okay.
that's some,
Okay.
yeah, that's kind of,
That's
so
cool.
my,
That's
I
like
know, I don't know.
I can just like let the record show I'm so bad with my hands. I can barely assemble an IKEA dresser. I literally assembled something the other day and it completely fell apart because of course stupidly I assembled it in the living room and I was trying to carry it and I was like, what did I do? And then I carried it and it just completely collapsed. Anyway.
Well, and then there's all the pieces. IKEA is the worst. Like I've never been able to assemble something IKEA on my own. But and so my very first home, this was a long time ago in Los Angeles with my husband when we first got married, was a fixer upper, and so we did a lot of that work ourselves. I was taking classes like at Home Depot, and
Wow.
we
Oh my
rented these like
God.
big circuit. So some of that I knew, like the details of what it means to work with your hands. But really, that's as far as it went. So
Right.
I really I wanted to take those details and I thought, well, and I watch so much HGTV, like I can just marathon, the tiny house show.
That's like what I do with cooking videos. I don't really cook very
Yeah,
much, but like it's so therapeutic to watch something. And you always have this sense of like, oh, that doesn't actually look that hard. Like I could do that. I could do that. And
until
then you
you
get
actually
down
have to
there and
do
you're
it,
like,
right?
I cannot do this.
Well, there is something therapeutic about starting with an idea or starting with nothing, and then it turns into an idea, and then it turns into something that you can see and smell and feel. And so I really wanted to get to the heart of that in this book of what does it mean to be a kid who takes an idea and you make it big and nobody
Right.
thinks that you can do it.
Right.
So, but I took all the details from my life. This is really a love letter to my culture. I threw in like
Right.
every Filipino
I
detail.
love it. I love it so much. I mean,
This is a
growing
little
up.
bit different in that sense, but I wanted this as a love letter to my culture. So I
Yeah.
drew from my childhood, like what were the memories, what were the smells, what were the details, what were the
Yeah.
senses that I could
Yeah.
remember. And all of that is writing from your own life,
That's
and
great.
and
That's
those are the
amazing.
things that you use to layer what a character is doing or what choices she's making. So yeah, it was
Okay.
fun.
So real talk, do you ever
Okay.
put
Oh
in
no.
real arguments or real rifts between your family members? I mean, I'm actually known to do that. I like my, if you read Front Desk, the mother in here is, complicated. Just complicated
Yeah.
as moms
Mom,
are, right?
daughters. Yeah.
As
Those are
moms
complicated
are, as our
relationships.
relationships with our daughters and our sons go, we're
Mm-hmm.
not perfect, it's complicated. Do you ever put in real arguments or, real complications, conflicts like that?
So sometimes when in real life, if somebody like does something that's annoying or makes me mad, I'm like, I'm gonna stick you as a character in my book and you're gonna get pushed off a cliff.
Exactly. Like, guys, this is the real reason to be a writer. There's no
Of
other
course.
big reason. It's not for the money.
Yeah,
It's the real
exactly.
reason. It's the superpower. We can make you look bad in a book or in a Netflix movie. No, I'm just kidding. That's not a threat, by the way. I usually don't do
No, it's
that.
no threat. We're just joking. It's fun to push a character off a cliff, so we'll
Yeah.
just say that much. But yeah, there's like little references to people that I know or like observations that I make of people, and that that is a fun part of being a writer is you can, and that's and the more you do it, the more you become acute at looking and observing things around you.
Mm-hmm.
When you
Mm-hmm.
get really specific with details, that's when oh gosh, I'm really writing, because you notice things in a really small way, and
Right.
just throw that into your scenes or in what you're writing, because that gives
Yeah.
a lot of richness to what you're doing.
Well, that's what we were talking about a lot on this show as well. Just the therapeuticness of writing, right? That
Mm-hmm.
that value in and of itself. It's like, well, what I feel is that basically because I can use real life, I'm not so afraid of real life. And so when
Mm-hmm.
something crazy happens, like the coronavirus,
Hello,
or even
coronavirus.
just like all the complications. I mean, it's not even just about the virus. It's like being stuck in the same house and like
Right.
living with people that you don't always agree with, or whatever it is, right? You can take some of those things and they become little seeds in your writing, and they
Mm-hmm.
make the writing so much richer, like you said. Absolutely. Have you ever gotten in
Yeah.
trouble for it though?
Not yet, but
have any
yeah.
have any of your family members come up to you and said, May, you may not write about me in your next book?
No. So I have a ton of freedom now to just say whatever I want. But
Yeah.
it is when you're writing from your own life, it's especially if you're writing about challenging moments or feelings. I take a lot of feelings that I've experienced and just put them in a different situation. But it's such a wonderful way to step back and process what you've been through, and to be able to put words to something that you've lived. And I think that is really powerful just as a creative process to,
Absolutely.
step
Absolutely.
back.
Yeah. And
And what about
you've
when
been
you're writing front, sorry, okay, you
no,
first.
go ahead.
Well, when you were writing front desk, was that hard to step back because so much of that was based on your life? Or like, were you able to put on, okay, here's my writer's hat, here's my editor's hat. Let's
Yeah.
look at this from a fictional
Yeah.
standpoint.
I knew, like, what I always say is I am only really married to the emotions of a book. I
Mm-hmm.
can change all the scenes around, and I can change parts of characters that I feel are still being authentic to the character. So the
Mm-hmm.
character comes to me usually like pretty fully formed. I won't really start a book unless I really love a character. It's just too much time to spend, even with fictional people that
So
that you
do you
don't.
do you always start off with a character then? You
Yes,
thought,
I
okay,
always start
okay.
off with a character, and I have a vague idea of the emotions I want to explore, and have a vague idea of kind of how I want to explore it through what scenes and whatnot. And usually
Mm-hmm.
what ends up happening is I write a draft that turn into my editor, who says, I love the emotions, but the scenes are all wrong. And then I have to go back. And you know what that's like, right?
Yeah,
Like, just like,
that sounds
like,
familiar. Very
yeah.
familiar.
And the thing is, it never gets easier. I don't know about you, but like for me, I'm on like, I don't even know, like book 4 or 5 or something, and it just never gets easier for me. It's always the same, like figuring out, how do I do this again?
Yeah, it's almost like you forget like the whole
Mm-hmm.
year or 2 years that you spent working on a book. But writing is like a muscle. The more that you do it, the stronger you get. It might not feel that way, but when you do it again and again, then that muscle just gets stronger. So, like
Yeah.
all of you writers at home, you just need to write. Like
Yeah.
read a lot and write a bunch, and you'll get better each time.
Do you ever get frustrated when you have a period of time when you're not writing? Do you ever get this
All the
feeling of like,
time.
yeah, okay, I'm
Yes.
glad
Like
enough to tell me
during, I
now.
mean, now during, we've been sheltering in place for, I think, a month or almost a month. And
Yeah, a month. I think it's a month.
yeah. My mind has not been anywhere near where it normally is when it comes to like every day I do a little brainstorming or I write a little bit. I write for my day job as well, so it's just
What is
hard.
your day job? Let's talk about that,
Um,
like that balance.
Yeah, I do editorial work for different websites and things like that.
Mhm.
So, but then that's a very different kind of writing than writing fiction.
Right.
There's like specific rules to how you write a little piece for a website. Like how many words, you have to
Right.
hit a different
Right.
tone, a different voice that's
Right.
not your own
Right.
voice. So that's like very mechanical to me. Like, so I could do that during the past few weeks because that's just like an automatic thing. But, trying to write anything like this, it's like, oh my gosh, I can't, how do I do this? I just can't string any thoughts together. So it's nice to hear that other writers
Yeah.
are kind of feeling the same way. I think you need to be easy on yourself during these times, right?
Hmm.
Like, and just kind
Absolutely.
of get back to
Absolutely.
it as you can.
Yeah. So there was a question on where you are. You're in the Bay Area, like me.
I'm in the Bay Area. I'm
We're
probably
both
like
sheltering
20,
in place.
I know. I'm probably like 25 minutes away from Kelly. And
Yeah,
normally
we're
I'd
really
love,
close to each
yeah,
other,
we're
and we
really
usually
close.
see each other all the time. Like we see each
Yes,
other,
like
we have lunch together, we have coffee with each other, we have dinner together. But lately we did that Zoom call, which was really fun.
did we? I don't even remember. That's
Yeah,
how
we did
much
it with
everything has
Victoria.
blurred together. Everything is blurring
um,
together.
okay, so the final thing I want to talk about, because we have like 10 minutes
Okay.
left, is May is an expert on themes. And this is something that I've wanted to explore more
Themes.
of. She is the master of themes. How do you decide the themes and how do you weave them into your stories?
Yeah, so you said that you start off with characters often as your process. So my
Yeah.
my process is I like to start off with themes. I think
Okay.
about what kind of big theme I want to tackle. And so for this one, for Any Day with You, I wanted to talk about resiliency. And this was interesting because I wrote this a couple years ago before any of what's happening in our world happened. So, but when I'm doing that, when I write a first draft, I don't consciously think of that like I'm writing about resiliency. I just let it all like, flow as much as it can. I just
Uh-huh.
get it all out without thinking too much.
Yeah.
Because I find that messes up my process if I'm like really consciously trying to do something. So I just do first draft, I let it all flow. And then when I revise, that's when I go back and I'm like, okay, so all these things that my characters are doing, all of the, imagery I'm using, how will I get those to relate back to the theme of resiliency?
Right,
So this
right.
girl is going through a change. How does she get through it? And how does she come out of this change stronger? So I don't do that until like much, much later in the process. And, my editors are wonderful for that because they pose a lot of questions, especially if they know what your theme is. So that, it starts off as this big thing like resiliency, and then
Big
as I get to
nebulous
I
thing.
know this big nebulous like messy mass,
Monster.
like
Ah.
a big ominous gray cloud, and
Yeah,
you're like, what
exactly.
is
Yeah.
this thing? And then you can drill down and think about the choices your characters are making, or think about the specific imagery you're using. Like I used a lot of ocean imagery, which all sort of goes back to the
Yeah,
theme of
you're wonderful with
resiliency.
imagery. I love your imagery. There's a
Oh,
question
thank you.
about May's debut novel. It's called The House That Lou Built.
Here's the
Please show it to
cover.
us. Show it off, girl. It's
Woo!
amazing. And it's an award-winning book. It's a critically acclaimed
Look at it.
award-winning
Look
book.
how
I love it. I love
shiny.
it. I love it. And so like back to the theme, the topic of theme, back to the theme of themes.
The theme of themes.
One of my old editors, Cheryl Klein, who I love, and
Oh,
she's amazing.
I've
She
listened to
was,
every
I
single
think,
one of her podcasts, by the way.
yeah, and I
Yeah.
think that she might have been the one. Actually, I don't remember if it was her, but I think it was her. I think she was the one who said that when you're working on a book or story, you should have the themes on little post-its by your desk.
Oh, that's a great
And
idea.
then when you're revising every scene, you have to be able to pinpoint which post-it you're hitting. Because if you're not hitting one of
Oh,
those
wow.
post-its, that scene's got to go. That scene is no longer serving any point other than that you
Hmm.
like to write
Yeah,
it.
of course. Because
So
theme,
that was,
brings richness, like any
yeah,
of
that
this.
that
Yeah.
was really good advice. But it's really hard. It's hard to make a scene impactful for the purpose of theme. I find
Hmm.
like it's really, really hard because we're balancing so many things as writers. We're balancing pacing and and I feel like sometimes, do you feel like theme and pacing kind of go head to head a little bit?
A little bit, yeah. But I don't. again, I think things just start bubbling up, especially
Mhm.
as you get to know your characters, and you're like, oh wow, look at that theme I just wrote. I didn't even know that I just wrote
Yeah.
it.
I love
So
those moments. I love
I
those moments.
know.
We're just like, what did I do? I didn't even know I could do that. Oh my God. It's
That's the
it
best.
happens. It happens
And
very
you just
rarely
pat
these
yourself on
days.
the back.
You
You're like,
pat
I'm
yourself on the
so,
back.
yeah.
But yeah, so like pacing, you have to balance the pacing with the theme because sometimes you can get so wrapped up into executing a theme that it becomes almost a little slow in terms of the pace of the story and the plot. Do you
Hmm.
struggle with plot? Is that how do you combat plot?
Yes, I struggle with plot because I'm a character-based writer.
Yeah, me too. Me
But
too. Yeah.
yeah, and so the house that Lou built, I didn't really I had a very general, like, I knew what I wanted the beginning and ending to be, but I
Mhm.
sort of had this like mucky middle for a while. Um, but it's different now, especially if you are, working with a publisher and suddenly they have deadlines, like you have to hit the
Yeah.
deadline, right?
Yeah.
So I do a lot more outlining before than I ever used to do. I used to be a big pantser, but now I'm sort of
Yeah.
like halfway, maybe like a little bit more pantser and then a tiny bit
Yeah.
plotter.
I
But I
will
do
I
have
will
to know
start
where it's
off.
going.
Yeah,
Hmm.
like I have like when I start off, I will start off with a I'll start off just writing with no real outline for
Hmm.
a couple of chapters. I let myself go for like like 4 or 5 chapters. And then I force myself to stop because I'm like, Kelly, you're getting a little too carried away. There's gonna be no plot, it's gonna be bad.
And is it really detailed, like beat by beat is how you outline, or is it like just kind of
Now
vague?
unfortunately now I have to. I say unfortunately even though I give this advice to kids all the time, like plotting
Hmm.
is the best thing you can do as a beginner writer, like as a student, it is honestly the best thing you can do. The reason
Hmm.
why I say unfortunately is because we all know plotting is not that fun. You know,
No,
like
it's
there's no
yeah.
way we can sugarcoat that. It's just not that fun to be sitting around like plotting every single thing. But these days, I actually find that writing a synopsis, writing some sort of an outline out, but
Hmm.
writing in a fun way so that I don't bore myself to death is helpful before I start
Yeah,
writing.
there's that tip of if you can write your book jacket before you write the book, just
Yeah,
kind of like a little concise
yeah,
synopsis of what your book is about, then
yeah,
that helps you understand what you're writing. But I do
yeah.
something, I think, so I sort of learned this from Wendy Lamb, my editor, and I feel like I've heard Cheryl Klein talk about this too, is I often outline after I've written something
Really?
because
Okay.
you so like I'll write
Yeah,
something and then I'll make the outline, and then when you're
yeah,
looking at the outline of what you wrote you can
yeah,
sort of see where the holes are. So
yeah.
I
Definitely.
normally do
I
that
just
like on
did
a big
that.
poster board.
I
Oh, you
would
did?
wrote I wrote a synopsis of a new book and then I went and wrote like a bunch of words. I mean like I think I wrote like 50,000 words or something.
Oh
And then
wow.
I was forced and then one of my agents said, "You know, you should really update your synopsis cuz I know you're going to go off the synopsis. Knowing you're going to veer off." I said, "Fine." So I went and rewrote the synopsis and now I have to completely rewrite the book because the synopsis has changed from the
Oh
book,
wow,
which has
yeah.
changed from the synopsis, you know? So
But
I
which
just keep going in
happens, yeah.
circles.
I mean, it happens. And I think the thing to know, especially if you're just trying to write a book for the first time, is those things happen. And a story is going to change as you get to know your themes or your characters. And there's no right way.
Yeah.
It's how a story comes out. Sometimes you
Yeah.
just have to let it come out in however it's going to do that.
Yeah, and it's really comforting. First of all, it's awesome talking to you, but also really comforting because, you know, we are writers who take our time. Like, and I think that that cannot be emphasized
We have
enough,
so much
guys.
time now.
You know, we have time, but like, you know, May and I are writers who really take that time seriously. We take the craft seriously. We don't have to rush, you know? And I know that there's always like the pressure, like I don't know if you feel it, but there feels like there's pressure to produce a book a year or even 2 books a year or something like that. And how do you combat that pressure and stay creative?
I eat cupcakes and I watch Netflix.
Yeah, yeah.
It's pressure. I don't know. I try to just kind of push that off and I just do what I can. Like that's all you can do. But and for me, I know every writer is different, but I do try to write daily because for me, again, it's that muscle, exercising that muscle and
Yeah.
making it
Yeah.
stronger. But
Hmm.
little by little, it really builds. So like
Yeah.
with the house that Lou built, I was working full time and my kids were really young. And I wrote a little bit each day. And then, by
How
the
long did it take
time,
you?
oh gosh, I don't remember. It was a long time ago now. Probably a year, a little over a year. I mean, that was like
Yeah.
completely on my own without my agent,
Yeah.
without anybody, without any other
Yeah.
eyes on it. But, and again,
Yeah.
that was just like a little bit each night because that's all I could do.
And
So
that's all you need. That's,
yeah,
that's fine. It's totally fine. We have to be able to forgive ourselves. There's no expectation that you have to crank out so many words.
of
I mean, I tried
course.
that. I tried like, oh, I have to write 2,000 words a day. And then guess what? The word sucked. Like I had to go back.
I never do. I never look at word count. I know writers, so, there's some writers and this is their process. It works for them, but they're like, okay, today I'm hitting 600 words. I'm like, I
Yeah.
just never look at word count. I know what my goal is for a scene and I just write until I feel like I accomplished that goal.
Right.
But
Right.
I'm never
Right.
like, oh, today is 2,000 words. I just can't, I don't think that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And whatever works for you, works for you. Like, and that's the other thing.
Absolutely.
Like, sometimes I hear about other people's writing process and I think, oh, maybe I should be doing that. But you know what? You just have to do it a lot and figure out what feels good to you and what feels organic to you as you're writing.
Right, right,
No
absolutely.
pressure. Yeah.
No pressure, no pressure. We've been doing this, this is our second year. We debuted together in 2018. So we've only really been sort of at the published author game for 2 years, right? Of course, we've
Right.
been writing for a lot longer than that. But you can talk to people who've written for 20 years, like Stacy. Stacy McAnulty was on here. She's one of my dearest
Oh, she
friends.
was. Yeah.
She has written like 25 books or something, 22 books. But it doesn't really matter because every single book is so different that it's
Mm-hmm.
always this struggle over and over and over again. And it's not like it magically just gets a million times easier. Though there are strategies and tools, which hopefully you guys have learned some of that in this class. I
But a
want to
good
thank you
struggle.
so much. Thank you so much for
Thank
coming
you,
on.
Kelly. Yeah.
Thank you. I hope this was fun as your first
It
Instagram.
was.
Was it? Okay,
Yay.
cool.
I
I'm
know
going
how
to
to
give
do
you
it
a
now.
huge virtual hug because I love
Yay.
you and I am so sorry I can't see you and I miss you so much. And I
Sometime
really
soon.
hope that we can get together in real life soon. But I'm really glad that we got to interact in front of so many people who can watch and listen from your amazing wisdom and hopefully
Thank you. Yeah.
buy our books, guys. Let's hold it up one
Yay.
last
Oh,
time.
here. One last time. May 5th, any day with you.
Absolutely. These are coming out in May. Please order them from your local
Yay.
indie bookstore if you can, or online, wherever you can find books. We do need your support. Thank you guys
We
so
do.
much and have
Thank
a
you.
great
Love you,
rest of your
Kelly.
day.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.